Why is being woke considered a bad thing? I don't think being woke is a bad thing. It's when it's disingenuous that it rubs people the wrong way. Being invested in the well-being and equity of all people, especially disenfranchised minorities, might be considered woke, but it's a virtuous endeavor to raise the quality of life for all people. This isn't bad and should be aspired to. Major corporations and Hollywood shoving minority groups to the forefront to take advantage of their presence and to capitalize on a fairly recent desire from the general public to seek equity solely in the interest of making money is the bad kind of woke. This is what gets the most negative attention. Whether it's Pepsi putting out a cringe ad with Kendall Jenner or a Hollywood studio racer gender swapping all of the characters from a decades-old IP. It's not because they have decided to get into the make the lives of others better game. They are doing it to market products towards a trend they believe is popular right now. And that's disgusting. It depends. There's being more considerate, realizing some behaviors are inherently racist, ableist, homophobic, etc., and trying to do better and be kinder. But there's some people who take it so far that nobody could ever please them, and it comes off more like they're virtue signaling than actually being genuine in their consideration of other people's feelings. Oftentimes, this you can see when someone not of a marginalized group speaks for that group. For example, we were often taught in school that African American was the polite term, and if you used anything else it was racist. However, actual black people will tell you they prefer the term black, and it's more about how you use the word. Or when we are told to say special needs, when it's preferred to say disabled by actual disabled people. Being woke or considerate is not inherently bad, but there is a line between being kind and essentially mocking marginalized people by virtue signaling and not being genuine. I think some people take it too far and actually just become racist or discriminatory in their wokeness. You don't have to tear down one group of people to lift up another. I've also noticed that there's a lot of bullying and belittling of people that aren't as vocal about certain movements, or if they don't boycott certain things that the woke people see as problematic. It's like they believe in live and let live, but only for minorities. If you're not in that minority, then you better prepare to be verbally bashed for not adhering to their ways. I mean, it initially was a positive term, but it was eventually hijacked by reactionaries as this decade's equivalent to older terms like political correctness or social justice warrior, all of which essentially refer to the same idea. Anyone who thinks society has injustices that should be addressed is either ignorant or disingenuous, since clearly our society is totally fine outside of the threats posed by progressives. It's only a bad thing if you agree with that kind of person. It's more complicated than that. Being woke is just a broad label. The problem with these labels is that they don't mean the same thing to everyone. So being woke isn't a bad thing to some people and is a bad thing to others because they have entirely different meanings. A lot of the problem from it being bad to those who see it that way comes from people who claim to be woke but are clearly ignoring things they claim to care about because it doesn't fit their narrative. Hypocrisy on many levels. It's also strange because a lot of people who claim to be woke are claiming to be against the ruling class, against the machine, against the system, but are all actively supporting those things. Sorts by controversial. Even as a very liberal person, woke has been a term that is used to just define a sort of person I find to be performative in their ideology. They are going through motions of saying and doing things they think they are supposed to in order to prove their identity to the world, but when you look at how they live or what they actually know, it doesn't match up. IMHO. They'd be the white liberal MLK Jr. warned, or even worse than the blatant racists. In my experience, they haven't spent much time investigating or exploring their beliefs. Their beliefs are shallow, predictable, and lacking nuance, largely because they aren't actually invested beyond an identity. They often are ignorant, poorly informed, and largely uninterested in issues beyond the soundbites and, dare I say, virtue signaling they've learned they're supposed to engage in. Sure, I agree with some of the things they say, but woke people are apart from informed liberals or progressives IMHO. Because it's associated with people who use it to make themselves look good and morally superior. Similarly to how feminist is sometimes associated with the crazies who hate men to the point of actually wanting them exterminated, castrated. You get associated with the most extreme of your group. Being woke isn't bad if it's within reason. It's good to be aware when things are sexist, racist, and oppressive. The problem is when it gets taken to the extreme. At my university, we have been trained to nitpick, analyze, and tear apart anything and everything in the search for injustices. Eventually, everything feels sexist and racist. Even things which aren't sexist or racist in the slightest, and you feel like you're walking on eggshells where you're scared to say or do or like anything because it might be construed as sexist or racist. You constantly live in fear of triggering someone. You constantly feel like you're a bad person, even though you aren't. This isn't a very nice way to live, which is why good people can get frustrated with woke agendas. The comments section is refreshing AF. I wasn't expecting nuanced takes on this. Being awake to social injustices is a good thing, but unfortunately most people who are described as woke now are performative about their ideology and do it to score social points. Mainly because it's been hijacked by the worst kind of people. Greedy, self-indulged hypocrites who shout louder than everyone else and go completely overboard with making literally everything a problem in some way. What was meant to be a mindset of wanting everyone to have equality and decent well-being has now been tuned into a weapon by reactionary angry virtue signalers on the internet who want something they can use to put down anyone who doesn't agree with them. That's why I consider it bad anyway. From the way woke people I see online act, I don't want any kind of association with them, even though I agree with the general principles. It's funny how the meaning changed. Woke used to be something people called themselves as a good thing. Now it's an insult. I don't even try to understand it. People take it to absurd levels. Outside the grifters, Twitter outrages and fake virtue signaling, many people have fundamental disagreements with this approach to human betterment. The fundamental axes of disagreement on how to reach a truly equal society. Wokeism represents the former, race hyperawareness versus race blindness, equality of outcome, equity versus equality of opportunity, cancellation, retribution versus reconciliation, rehabilitation, narratives versus truth, who versus what, intent taken versus intent meant, fundamentalism, accelerationism versus moderation, slow progress. The wokes aren't necessarily wrong, and these are false dichotomies, with a lot of sensible gray areas in the middle, but it captures the fundamental disagreements. Note: the opposite of woke is not conservative. Even if wokeism was a pure, untainted, corporate-free ideology, I would still see myself in opposition to it. It is a fundamental difference in values. Because asking people to empathize with others is, apparently, threatening to people who have bet their electoral futures on validating voters' self-absorption and bigotry. I have found that the word woke is only used by people who see tolerance and acceptance of things They don't understand as a bad thing. Being woke isn't a bad thing. The term has just been made derogatory by people who are more closed-minded. Lol, like 99% of these answers aren't even on the right track. Look for all the down-voted comments if you want the real answers. If a comment has a bunch of upvotes, that's just the groupthink justifying what they think. I would argue most of the replies you've seen in this thread are woke people trying to explain why other people don't like it. I think in principle most people support woke ideas, but demonizing certain people like it's payback time isn't doing the woke messaging any favors. Up to this point, some people, especially online, go overboard and just say what they think people want to hear. Woke has also ruined comedy. Being woke is not a bad thing in itself, but a lot of people take it too far. Getting offended just for the sake of it, or use it just for virtue signaling, it tends to annoy people. To me, it's the moving goalposts that the mindset, ideology, seems to have. Being fair and respectful regardless of sexuality, race, gender should be normal mindset regardless of someone's political, social orientation. Woke is when PPL say there's no enough being done for XYZ, even though it was acceptable yesterday. Which on the face of it might be a good, progressive mindset, but when the goal shifts the PPL not doing enough or terrible PPL when really they just have a slightly different opinion, you end up with this polarizing divide which isn't good for anyone. E.g. the fat acceptance idea. Seems initially it was, fat PPL should be accepted for their body and or choices, sounds reasonable. Now there are ideas that, fat is healthy. Fat is sexy. You're a bigoted if you don't think so. I imagine most PPL were on board with the initial idea, whereas the latter just breeds aversion to the whole fat acceptance idea. Because people take it to extremes for their own self-righteousness. Misunderstandings can easily ruin a life now. Mob rule, etc.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epic Heracast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.